The American Embassy in Prague was hosting its most prestigious social event of the year. Ambassador Jonathan Caldwell's daughter was marrying a Czech diplomat in a ceremony that brought together high-ranking officials from 12 countries, making it both a personal celebration and a significant diplomatic gathering. Security was tight, but the atmosphere was deliberately festive to demonstrate American confidence in international relations. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Among the 200 invited guests mingling in the embassy's elegant reception hall was a woman who had arrived alone, wearing a simple navy dress and carrying a small clutch purse. Diana Fletcher had been invited as the +1 of a junior State Department official who had fallen ill at the last minute. She stood quietly near the champagne table, observing the elaborate security arrangements with what appeared to be casual curiosity. The embassy's security team, led by Regional Security Officer Marcus Whitfield, maintained their professional vigilance while trying to remain unobtrusive during the celebration. Whitfield had 15 years of experience protecting American diplomatic facilities, and tonight's event required coordination between American security personnel, Czech police, and private security contractors hired specifically for the wedding. Diana moved through the reception with understated grace, politely declining invitations to dance and keeping her conversations brief and pleasant. To the other guests, she appeared to be exactly what her invitation suggested: a mid-level government employee attending a social obligation. Her appearance was unremarkable enough that she blended seamlessly into the crowd of diplomats, spouses, and assorted Washington professionals. "Another bureaucrat trying to network her way up the ladder," whispered Deputy Chief of Mission Carol Preston to her husband as they watched Diana accept a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. The embassy staff had spent weeks preparing for the wedding, transforming the main reception areas into an elegant venue that showcased American hospitality, while maintaining the security protocols required for such a high-profile international gathering. Metal detectors had been discreetly positioned at all entrances, and every guest had undergone background verification before receiving their invitation. Diana had passed the standard background check without any flags. Her employment record showed 10 years with the Department of Agriculture, focusing on international trade regulations. Her security clearance was routine, her travel history unremarkable, and her personal references all confirmed her as a dedicated but unremarkable civil servant who kept to herself and focused on her work. What the background check hadn't revealed was that Diana Fletcher didn't actually work for the Department of Agriculture. That identity was cover for someone whose real employment required the kind of anonymity that made social events like embassy weddings both necessary and challenging assignments. As the evening progressed, Diana positioned herself strategically throughout the reception hall, always maintaining sight lines to key areas while appearing to be simply enjoying the festivities. She noted the positioning of security cameras, the placement of emergency exits, and the communication patterns between different security teams. Her observations were systematic and thorough, though disguised as the natural curiosity of someone attending her first embassy event. The wedding ceremony itself was beautiful, conducted in the embassy's garden courtyard, with the bride wearing her grandmother's vintage dress and the groom in formal diplomatic attire. Ambassador Caldwell had delivered an emotional speech about the power of love to bridge international differences, drawing warm applause from guests who represented the complex web of modern diplomatic relationships. During dinner, Diana was seated at table 8 with other junior government employees and their spouses. The conversation focused on travel experiences, children's schools, and complaints about Washington traffic. She contributed appropriately to the discussions while maintaining her cover as someone whose most interesting professional challenge involved agricultural import quotas. "You must find trade regulations terribly dull after a while," commented Dr. Robert Kim, a cultural attaché who had been trying to engage Diana in conversation throughout the evening. "Not really," Diana replied with a slight smile. "Understanding how systems work together can be quite fascinating once you know what to look for." Dr. Kim interpreted this as the polite response of someone trying to make boring work sound interesting. He had no way of knowing that Diana was referring to security systems, communication protocols, and the intricate coordination required to protect diplomatic facilities from threats that most embassy staff preferred not to think about. As the reception continued into the evening, Diana excused herself periodically to visit the restroom or step outside for fresh air. These brief absences allowed her to conduct more detailed observations of areas that weren't visible from the main reception hall. She noted the positioning of backup security personnel, the location of communication equipment, and the emergency response procedures that had been established for the event. Regional Security Officer Whitfield briefly acknowledged Diana during one of her walks through the hallway, offering the polite nod he gave to all guests who wandered away from the main celebration. She returned his greeting with the same pleasant smile she had maintained throughout the evening, giving no indication that she was conducting a professional assessment of his security arrangements. "Enjoying the party?" Whitfield asked, making the kind of small talk expected from security personnel interacting with guests. "It's lovely," Diana replied. "The ambassador's staff has done an excellent job with the arrangements." "First time at an embassy event?" "Yes, I'm still learning how these things work." Whitfield smiled and continued his patrol, satisfied that Diana Fletcher was exactly what she appeared to be, a minor government employee attending a social function slightly above her usual level. He had dealt with hundreds of similar guests over the years, people who were excited to be included in diplomatic gatherings but posed no security concerns beyond the normal challenges of managing large social events. What Whitfield couldn't know was that Diana had been studying his security arrangements with the same professional attention that a master chef might bring to examining a competitor's kitchen. She understood the logic behind his personnel positioning, recognized the communication systems his team was using, and had already identified 3 potential vulnerabilities in the perimeter security that wouldn't be apparent to someone without specialized training. The wedding celebration was scheduled to continue until midnight, followed by a smaller after-party for family and close friends. Most guests would leave by 11 p.m., creating a natural transition period when security attention would shift from crowd management to facility protection. Diana had noted this timing and understood its implications for anyone who might view the event as an opportunity for activities that had nothing to do with celebrating matrimony. As the evening approached 10:30, Diana made her way to the ladies' room on the second floor, using the opportunity to observe the embassy's upper-level security arrangements. The hallways were elegant but functional, with diplomatic offices that had been secured for the evening but would return to normal operations the following morning. It was during this reconnaissance that Diana first noticed something that didn't align with the evening's festive atmosphere. A service elevator that should have been locked for security during the event was showing signs of recent use. The call button had been activated, and there were scuff marks on the floor that suggested heavy equipment had been moved through the area within the past few hours. Diana returned to the reception with the same pleasant demeanor she had maintained throughout the evening, but now her observations carried a different focus. She began noting details that had nothing to do with standard security protocols and everything to do with identifying activities that shouldn't be occurring during a diplomatic wedding celebration. The transformation from social guest to professional analyst was invisible to everyone around her. Diana continued smiling, making polite conversation, and appearing to enjoy the champagne and wedding cake. But now she was conducting the kind of surveillance that had kept American diplomatic facilities safe in places where wedding celebrations were sometimes used as cover for activities that no one wanted to acknowledge publicly. By 11 p.m., as guests began their departure process, Diana had identified enough anomalies to confirm her growing suspicion that tonight's wedding celebration was being used as cover for something that had nothing to do with diplomatic romance, and everything to do with the kind of threats that made embassy security a profession requiring capabilities most people preferred not to think about. At 11:15 p.m., as the reception began winding down and guests started making their departure announcements, Diana noticed 3 men in catering uniforms who hadn't been part of the original service staff. They were moving through the embassy's service corridors with equipment that looked like standard food service supplies, but their movement patterns suggested military training rather than hospitality experience. The men maintained perfect spacing between each other, communicated through subtle hand signals, and positioned themselves with sight lines that had nothing to do with clearing tables or serving dessert. Diana recognized the tactical formation immediately, but to anyone else, they would appear to be efficient catering staff managing the end-of-event logistics. She approached the champagne table, where Deputy Chief of Mission Carol Preston was saying goodbye to a group of European diplomats, waiting for an appropriate moment to express a casual concern that wouldn't disrupt the evening's pleasant atmosphere. "Mrs. Preston," Diana said quietly, "I noticed some catering staff I don't remember seeing earlier. Is it normal to bring in additional personnel during the reception?" Carol glanced toward the service area with mild interest. "Oh, they're probably the overnight cleaning crew. The embassy uses a different company for deep cleaning after major events." "Of course," Diana replied pleasantly. I just thought it was interesting that they were moving equipment upstairs when all the catering activities seemed to be on this level. Carol's attention was already shifting back to her diplomatic conversations. I'm sure Marcus has everything under control. He's very thorough about security protocols. Diana understood that her subtle warning had been dismissed as the nervous observation of someone unfamiliar with embassy operations. In Carol's experience, junior government employees often overreacted to routine activities that they didn't understand, and tonight's celebration had gone so smoothly that no one wanted to entertain unnecessary concerns. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. But Diana's training had taught her to trust pattern recognition over social politeness, and the patterns she was observing suggested preparation for activities that had nothing to do with cleaning services. The men were carrying cases that were too heavy for standard cleaning supplies, and their communication discipline was too precise for civilian contractors. She decided to approach Regional Security Officer Whitfield directly, timing her approach to coincide with his routine security check of the main reception area. He was reviewing the evening's departure schedule with one of his junior officers when Diana positioned herself nearby, waiting for an appropriate moment to speak privately. "Mr. Whitfield," she said as his conversation concluded, "could I have a brief word about something I noticed?" Whitfield turned toward her with the patient expression of someone accustomed to addressing guest concerns that usually involved lost coats or parking arrangements. "Of course, Ms. Fletcher. What can I help you with?" "I observed some service personnel who seemed to be operating outside the normal catering protocols. They're moving equipment to areas that weren't part of the original event setup." "The cleaning crew," Whitfield explained with professional courtesy. "They have access to all areas for post-event maintenance. It's standard procedure." Diana chose her words carefully, trying to convey concern without revealing the extent of her own observational capabilities. "I understand that, but their movement patterns and equipment seem inconsistent with cleaning operations. Have you verified their credentials recently?" Whitfield studied Diana's face, wondering if she was demonstrating genuine security awareness or simply the kind of hypervigilance that some government employees developed after attending too many security briefings. "Ms. Fletcher, I appreciate your attention to detail, but these contractors have been cleared through our standard verification process. The embassy has used this cleaning service for over 2 years without any issues." "I'm sure you're right," Diana said, maintaining her cover as someone who might be overreacting to unfamiliar procedures. "I just thought their equipment looked unusually heavy for cleaning supplies." "Industrial cleaning equipment can be quite substantial," Whitfield replied with the tone of someone explaining obvious facts to a civilian. "Floor buffers, carpet cleaners, specialized chemical containers. It's all necessary for maintaining a facility of this size." Diana nodded politely, understanding that her warnings were being interpreted as the nervous observations of someone out of her depth at a sophisticated diplomatic event. Whitfield's dismissal wasn't based on professional negligence, but on reasonable assumptions about her background and expertise. But as Whitfield returned to his security duties, Diana made a decision that would reveal the difference between civilian concern and professional assessment. She would conduct her own verification of the cleaning crew's activities, using methods that her Department of Agriculture cover story wouldn't normally justify. She excused herself from the reception area and made her way toward the service elevator, moving with the same casual pace she had maintained throughout the evening. The hallway was empty except for the sound of ongoing conversation drifting from the main reception hall and the distant clattering of genuine catering staff cleaning up in the kitchen areas. The service elevator was operational, which confirmed her earlier suspicion that it had been reactivated for purposes that weren't part of the original security protocol. Diana pressed the call button and waited, listening for sounds that would indicate normal cleaning activities versus something more concerning. When the elevator arrived, it contained equipment that definitely wasn't designed for floor maintenance. Electronic devices that looked like communication jammers, cases that were configured for sensitive instrumentation, and cable assemblies that suggested installation rather than cleaning activities. Diana photographed the equipment quickly with her phone, then called the elevator to the 3rd floor, where the embassy's communications center and administrative offices were located. The doors opened to reveal 2 of the men in catering uniforms installing devices that were definitely not cleaning equipment. They looked up as the elevator doors opened, and for a moment, Diana faced the choice between maintaining her cover and responding to an obvious security breach. The men's expression shifted from surprise to recognition that they had been discovered by someone who understood what she was seeing. "Excuse me," Diana said, with the same pleasant tone she had used throughout the evening. "I think I got off on the wrong floor." Quote, but as she pressed the button to return to the main reception level, one of the men stepped forward with a movement that suggested he wasn't planning to let her leave with knowledge of their activities. "Actually," he said in accented English that confirmed Diana's suspicion that these weren't American contractors. "I think you're exactly where you need to be." Diana understood that her evening had transitioned from social observation to active threat assessment. The men were clearly foreign operatives using the wedding celebration as cover for installing surveillance or sabotage equipment in one of America's most sensitive diplomatic facilities in Eastern Europe. The diplomatic implications were staggering. If foreign intelligence services had penetrated embassy security during a high-profile international celebration, it would represent a significant compromise of American diplomatic operations and a potential threat to every person attending the wedding. But more immediately, Diana faced the challenge of neutralizing the threat while maintaining operational security that protected both the embassy and her own classified status. She couldn't reveal her true capabilities without compromising cover that had taken years to establish. But she also couldn't allow foreign operatives to complete their mission while American diplomats celebrated downstairs. As the elevator descended toward the main reception level, Diana realized that her cover as a harmless agriculture bureaucrat was about to be tested in ways that would either preserve her anonymity or force her to demonstrate capabilities that would fundamentally change how everyone at the embassy understood who Diana Fletcher really was. The wedding celebration continued below, with guests saying their goodbyes and Ambassador Caldwell thanking everyone for making his daughter's special day so memorable. None of them knew that the evening's success now depended on whether a seemingly unremarkable woman in a navy dress could neutralize a foreign intelligence operation without disrupting the diplomatic relationships that made such celebrations possible. The elevator reached the main floor, and Diana faced the moment when her true capabilities would either remain hidden or be revealed in ways that would change everything about how the American embassy in Prague approached security operations. As the elevator doors began to close, Diana moved with fluid precision that transformed her from anxious civilian to tactical professional in less than 2 seconds. She struck the emergency stop button with her left hand, while simultaneously disabling the first operative with a nerve strike that dropped him instantly without making a sound. The second man reached for what appeared to be a communication device, but Diana intercepted his movement with a defensive technique that redirected his momentum into the elevator wall. He slumped unconscious beside his partner, and the hallway fell silent except for the distant sounds of wedding guests continuing their farewells 3 floors below. Diana quickly secured both operatives using zip ties from her evening clutch, then examined the surveillance equipment they had been installing in the embassy's communication center. The devices were sophisticated, Russian-made electronics designed to intercept encrypted diplomatic communications and transmit real-time intelligence about American operations throughout Eastern Europe. The installation was nearly complete. Another 10 minutes, and the operatives would have finished connecting the surveillance network to the embassy's primary communication systems, giving foreign intelligence services access to classified diplomatic correspondence that could compromise American operations across multiple countries. Diana photographed the equipment and its installation points, documenting evidence that would be crucial for counterintelligence analysis, while simultaneously beginning the delicate process of safely removing the devices without triggering any built-in security measures that might alert the operatives' handlers. Her training included advanced technical skills that most embassy security personnel didn't possess, but dismantling foreign surveillance equipment during an active diplomatic reception required both expertise and careful timing to avoid creating an incident that could escalate into an international diplomatic crisis. Working quickly but methodically, Diana identified the primary transmission unit and began tracing its connections to the embassy's communication infrastructure. The installation had been cleverly designed to appear like routine maintenance upgrades, but the actual functionality was pure espionage technology that would have given foreign intelligence services unprecedented access to American diplomatic operations. As she worked, Diana heard footsteps in the corridor approaching the communications center. The third operative, whom she hadn't encountered in the elevator, was apparently checking on his partner's progress. Diana positioned herself behind the door, preparing for another confrontation that would need to be resolved without alerting the wedding guests below. The operative entered the communications center expecting to find his colleagues completing their installation. Instead, he discovered two unconscious partners and a woman in a navy dress systematically dismantling surveillance equipment with professional precision that clearly exceeded anything a Department of Agriculture bureaucrat should possess. "Step away from the equipment," he said in heavily accented English, reaching inside his catering jacket for what Diana assumed was a weapon. "I don't think so," Diana replied calmly, continuing her work on the transmission unit while keeping the operative in her peripheral vision. He drew a suppressed pistol and aimed it at Diana's center mass. "You will stop immediately and place your hands where I can see them." Diana looked up from the surveillance equipment with the same pleasant expression she had worn throughout the wedding reception. "You're in an American embassy during a diplomatic celebration with over 200 witnesses downstairs. Shooting anyone would create complications that your operation isn't designed to handle. You know nothing about our operation. I know you're part of a 3-person technical team using wedding catering as cover to install long-term surveillance in American diplomatic communications. I know your equipment is Russian-manufactured and designed for real-time intelligence transmission. And I know that if you had wanted to shoot me, you would have done it already, instead of announcing your intentions." The operative's weapon remained trained on Diana, but his expression showed uncertainty about how a supposed agriculture bureaucrat could demonstrate such detailed understanding of intelligence operations. "Who are you?" "Someone who's very good at her job," Diana said, successfully disabling the transmission unit and beginning work on the secondary monitoring devices. "Stop, or I will shoot." Diana continued working, her movements efficient and confident. "Your mission requires stealth and plausible deniability. Gunfire in an embassy during an international diplomatic reception destroys both objectives. You're trained for covert operations, not armed confrontation in high-visibility environments." The operative hesitated, recognizing the tactical assessment was accurate but unsure how to proceed when his target demonstrated professional capabilities that exceeded his operational briefing about embassy personnel. Diana finished dismantling the surveillance network and stood up, facing the operative directly. "Your operation has failed. Your equipment has been neutralized. Your partners are secured. You have two choices. Surrender quietly and hope for diplomatic resolution, or escalate this into an incident that will compromise your government's relationship with the United States. You are one woman with no weapon. I'm one woman who just dismantled a sophisticated intelligence operation that took you months to plan and execute. What does that suggest about my capabilities?" The operative's training had prepared him for resistance from embassy security personnel, but not for encountering someone who could analyze his mission parameters and neutralize his equipment while demonstrating tactical awareness that exceeded his own operational briefing. Diana stepped closer, moving with the same calm confidence she had maintained throughout the evening. "Lower your weapon. This doesn't have to become an international incident. I cannot return to my handlers with failure. You can return to your handlers with accurate intelligence about American defensive capabilities. That's valuable information that might justify the operational cost of this mission." The operative understood the implication. Diana was offering him an honorable exit that would allow him to report valuable intelligence about American security capabilities while avoiding the diplomatic catastrophe that would result from armed confrontation during a wedding celebration. He lowered his weapon slowly, recognizing that continued resistance would likely result in his own neutralization by someone whose capabilities clearly exceeded his operational briefing about embassy personnel vulnerabilities. Diana secured the third operative using the same efficient techniques she had applied to his partners, then activated the embassy's internal communication system to contact Security Officer Whitfield without creating alarm among the wedding guests. "Marcus, this is Diana Fletcher. I need you to come to the third-floor communications center immediately. Bring 2 additional personnel, but keep it quiet. We have a situation that requires discretion." Whitfield's voice came through the intercom with obvious confusion. "Ms. Fletcher, what are you doing in the communications center? That area is restricted during events." "I'm preventing foreign intelligence services from compromising embassy communications. Please come up immediately and bring restraints for 3 individuals." There was a long pause before Whitfield responded, "I'll be right there." Diana spent the remaining time before Whitfield's arrival, completing her documentation of the surveillance equipment and ensuring that no secondary devices had been overlooked during the installation process. The evidence she had gathered would provide counterintelligence services with detailed information about foreign operational methods and technical capabilities. When Whitfield arrived with 2 additional security officers, he found Diana standing calmly beside 3 restrained foreign operatives and a collection of dismantled surveillance equipment that represented one of the most sophisticated intelligence operations ever attempted against an American diplomatic facility. "Ms. Fletcher," Whitfield said slowly, studying the scene with obvious amazement, "what exactly just happened here?" "Foreign intelligence operation using the wedding as cover to install long-term surveillance in embassy communications. I interrupted the installation and secured the operatives." Whitfield looked at the sophisticated surveillance equipment, then at the 3 unconscious men, then back at Diana. "How did you, your background check showed Department of Agriculture employment." Diana smiled with the same pleasant expression she had worn throughout the wedding reception. "My background is a bit more complex than agricultural trade regulations." "Who are you really?" "Someone who takes embassy security very seriously." As additional security personnel arrived to handle the captured operatives and begin the process of securing the compromised communication systems, Diana realized that her cover as a harmless wedding guest had been permanently compromised by the necessity of protecting American diplomatic operations. But the alternative would have been allowing foreign intelligence services to gain access to classified communications that could have compromised American diplomatic and military operations throughout Eastern Europe, a security breach that would have had consequences far exceeding the operational value of maintaining her anonymous status. The wedding celebration continued below, with Ambassador Caldwell and his guests unaware that a sophisticated foreign intelligence operation had been neutralized 3 floors above their heads by someone they had dismissed as a minor bureaucrat attending her first embassy social event. Within 20 minutes of Diana's call to Whitfield, the embassy's 3rd floor had been transformed into a secure operations center. Additional security personnel had arrived through discreet entrances, the captured operatives had been transferred to holding facilities, and the compromised communication equipment was being analyzed by technical specialists who had appeared with remarkable speed for a Saturday evening. Ambassador Caldwell arrived at the communication center still wearing his formal dinner attire, but his expression carried the serious focus of someone who understood that his daughter's wedding had inadvertently provided cover for a significant threat to American diplomatic security. He studied the dismantled surveillance equipment before turning his attention to Diana. "Ms. Fletcher," he said carefully, "I think we need to have a conversation about your actual background and why you were really at tonight's celebration." Diana maintained her composure, understanding that her cover identity was no longer sustainable given the evidence of her capabilities that surrounded them. "Mr. Ambassador, I believe that conversation should include people with appropriate security clearances." "They're on their way." Within the hour, Diana found herself in the embassy's secure conference room, facing a panel that included Ambassador Caldwell, Regional Security Officer Whitfield, and 2 individuals who had arrived without fanfare but whose presence indicated involvement in intelligence operations that exceeded normal diplomatic protocols. The first was Jennifer Crawford, identified as a State Department security specialist, though her demeanor and tactical knowledge suggested much deeper involvement in counterintelligence operations. The second was Michael Stevens, who introduced himself simply as Washington Liaison, but whose questions revealed familiarity with classified intelligence programs. "Diana Fletcher isn't your real name," Stevens began, consulting a tablet that apparently contained information not available through standard background checks. "It's one of my real names," Diana replied. "I have several, depending on operational requirements." Crawford leaned forward with professional interest. "Your Department of Agriculture employment record is legitimate, but it's administrative cover for activities that have nothing to do with trade regulations. Correct?" Ambassador Caldwell looked between Diana and the intelligence specialists with obvious confusion. "Would someone please explain what's actually happening here?" Stevens activated a secure display screen that showed biographical information Diana recognized as accurate but classified. "Ambassador, meet Agent Diana Fletcher, also known as Agent Sarah Mitchell, Agent Lisa Parker, and Agent Catherine Brooks, depending on which operation she's been assigned to." The display revealed employment history that had nothing to do with agricultural bureaucracy, Defense Intelligence Agency, Central Intelligence Agency, National Security Agency, assignments in 12 countries over 8 years, all involving counterintelligence operations designed to protect American diplomatic and military facilities from exactly the kind of sophisticated surveillance operation she had just neutralized. Agent Fletcher specializes in embedded security operations within American diplomatic facilities, Crawford explained. She's inserted into embassy staff or social events to provide advanced threat detection and response capabilities that exceed normal security protocols. Whitfield studied the information with professional fascination and growing embarrassment. You've been conducting counterintelligence surveillance throughout tonight's event. I've been providing security overwatch for a high-value diplomatic gathering that intelligence assessments indicated might be targeted for exploitation by foreign services, Diana corrected. Ambassador Caldwell realized the implications. My daughter's wedding was identified as a potential security risk. Stevens nodded. International celebrations at American embassies provide opportunities for foreign intelligence services to gain access to diplomatic facilities under social cover. Tonight's guest list included officials from multiple countries, creating both legitimate diplomatic value and potential security vulnerabilities. So Agent Fletcher was assigned to attend the wedding specifically to watch for threats? Agent Fletcher was assigned to evaluate and respond to threats that standard embassy security might not detect or be equipped to handle, Crawford clarified. Diana spoke for the first time since the briefing began. The operation I disrupted tonight had been in planning for at least 6 months. The surveillance equipment was sophisticated enough to compromise diplomatic communications throughout this region. Standard security protocols wouldn't have detected the installation until it was operational and transmitting intelligence. Whitfield looked at Diana with new understanding and professional respect. When you tried to warn me about the suspicious catering staff, you already knew they were foreign operatives. I suspected, but I needed verification before taking action that would compromise my cover or create an international incident. And when I dismissed your concerns, I understood that your response was based on reasonable assumptions about my background and capabilities. Standard protocol when dealing with civilian concerns during social events. Ambassador Caldwell was beginning to comprehend the scope of what had occurred during his daughter's celebration. Agent Fletcher, how often do American embassies face this kind of threat? More often than most diplomatic personnel realize, Ambassador. Foreign intelligence services routinely attempt to exploit social events, construction projects, maintenance contracts, and cultural exchanges to gain access to American diplomatic facilities. Crawford added context that explained Diana's presence. Agent Fletcher has prevented similar operations at embassy facilities in Berlin, Vienna, and Rome over the past 2 years. Her success rate in identifying and neutralizing sophisticated foreign intelligence operations is unprecedented. Stevens displayed additional information about the evening's operation. The surveillance network that was installed tonight was designed to intercept and transmit real-time intelligence about American diplomatic communications throughout Eastern Europe. If successful, it would have compromised ongoing negotiations regarding NATO expansion, energy security partnerships, and counterterrorism cooperation. Quote, the diplomatic implications would have extended far beyond this embassy, Diana added. Foreign intelligence services would have gained access to classified discussions involving multiple allied governments. Whitfield realized the magnitude of what Diana's intervention had prevented. Agent Fletcher, the 3 operatives you neutralized, how did you identify them as foreign intelligence rather than legitimate contractors? Movement patterns, communication discipline, equipment specifications, and operational timing. Their behavior was consistent with military training rather than civilian service work. And you were able to assess all of that while maintaining your cover as a wedding guest. Surveillance and threat assessment are primary components of my training. Social events provide excellent opportunities for observing security vulnerabilities while appearing to participate in normal diplomatic activities. Ambassador Caldwell looked at Diana with newfound respect and concern. Agent Fletcher, I owe you an apology. My staff and I treated you as an unimportant guest when you were actually protecting everyone at tonight's celebration. No apology necessary, Ambassador. Effective cover requires authentic dismissal from people who don't know they're being protected. Crawford consulted her tablet before addressing the group. The operatives Agent Fletcher captured are being processed through diplomatic channels. Their equipment will be analyzed to identify broader intelligence networks and communication methods. What happens now? Whitfield asked. Stevens answered. The embassy's communication systems will be completely audited to ensure no secondary surveillance devices were installed. Security protocols will be reviewed and updated based on tonight's intelligence. And Agent Fletcher will be reassigned to her next operation. Diana stood to leave, understanding that her work at the Prague embassy was complete. Ambassador, please extend my congratulations to your daughter and her new husband. It was a beautiful celebration. Agent Fletcher, Ambassador Caldwell said as she reached the door, thank you for ensuring that my daughter's wedding remained a celebration rather than becoming an international incident. Diana smiled with the same pleasant expression she had worn throughout the evening. That's what we're here for, Ambassador, even when you don't know we're here. Quote. As Diana left the embassy through a discreet exit that bypassed the remaining wedding guests, Ambassador Caldwell realized that American diplomatic security involved capabilities and personnel that operated far beyond anything he had previously understood. The woman who had appeared to be a harmless bureaucrat attending a social obligation had actually been a highly trained counterintelligence specialist whose presence had prevented a sophisticated foreign intelligence operation from compromising American diplomatic communications throughout Eastern Europe. Her professional effectiveness had depended on being dismissed and underestimated by everyone around her, including the very people she had been assigned to protect. The perfect cover for someone whose job required remaining invisible while preventing threats that most people preferred not to know existed. 2 days after the wedding, Jennifer Crawford met Diana at a secure facility outside Prague to conduct the operational debrief that would provide context for Diana's extraordinary background and explain why someone with her capabilities had been assigned to what appeared to be routine embassy social security. Diana, Crawford began, accessing files that revealed the depth of her training and experience. Let's discuss your actual professional history for the record. Diana's real story began 8 years earlier at the Defense Intelligence Agency's Special Operations Training Center, where she had been recruited directly from the Marine Corps Force Reconnaissance Program after demonstrating exceptional aptitude for covert operations and cultural adaptation. I was selected for the Diplomatic Security Enhancement Program, Diana explained. It's a classified initiative designed to embed highly trained operatives within American diplomatic facilities worldwide to provide advanced threat detection and response capabilities. The program had been created in response to increasing sophistication of foreign intelligence operations targeting American embassies. Traditional security measures were adequate for conventional threats, but newer challenges required personnel with specialized training in counterintelligence, technical surveillance, and cultural integration. Your training record shows completion of programs that most intelligence professionals never encounter, Crawford noted, reviewing documentation of Diana's educational background. Diana had spent 18 months at the CIA's Covert Operations Training Facility, mastering surveillance detection, technical intelligence gathering, and advanced combat techniques. Her language training included fluency in Russian, Mandarin, Arabic, and German, with conversational capability in 6 additional languages. But her most specialized training had occurred at a facility that didn't appear on any official organizational charts. The Advanced Diplomatic Counterintelligence School operated under joint CIA-DIA oversight and trained operatives specifically for embedded operations within American diplomatic facilities. The school teaches integration techniques that allow operatives to function within embassy communities for extended periods without detection by either American personnel or foreign intelligence services, Diana explained. Students learn to maintain cover identities that can withstand both administrative scrutiny and social interaction. Crawford understood the complexity of Diana's operational requirements. You've successfully maintained cover identities for months at different embassy facilities while conducting counterintelligence operations that prevented significant security breaches. Diana's assignment history revealed the scope of threats that American diplomatic facilities faced globally. Her first operation in Berlin had involved identifying and neutralizing a German industrial espionage network that was using cultural exchange programs to gain access to classified trade negotiations. In Vienna, she had prevented Russian intelligence services from installing surveillance equipment during a renovation project that would have compromised American intelligence sharing with NATO allies. The operation had required Diana to work undercover as a construction management consultant for 6 months, while documenting the infiltration attempt. Her most complex assignment had been in Rome, where she spent 8 months working as a cultural liaison, while tracking a Chinese intelligence network that was exploiting academic partnerships to gather intelligence about American military technology transfer programs. Each operation required different cover identities and social integration techniques, Crawford noted. You've demonstrated exceptional capability for adapting to diverse professional and cultural environments. But Diana's expertise extended beyond traditional counterintelligence operations. Her technical training included advanced knowledge of surveillance equipment, communication systems, and electronic warfare techniques that allowed her to identify and counter sophisticated foreign intelligence operations. The equipment I dismantled at the embassy represents current Russian intelligence capabilities, Diana said. The transmission systems were designed to intercept and relay encrypted diplomatic communications in real time, providing Moscow with immediate access to American policy discussions and strategic planning. Crawford reviewed technical analysis of the surveillance network Diana had neutralized. Intelligence assessment indicates this equipment represented a significant advancement in Russian technical capabilities. How were you able to identify and dismantle it so quickly? Part of my training involves staying current with foreign intelligence technology and operational methods. I study captured equipment, analyze foreign technical capabilities, and practice countermeasures against emerging surveillance techniques. Diana's ongoing education included regular briefings at NSA technical facilities, where she learned about new foreign intelligence capabilities and developed methods for detecting and countering advanced surveillance operations. You also maintain active coordination with international counterintelligence services, Crawford observed, reading from classified reports of Diana's consultations with British, French, and German intelligence agencies. Foreign intelligence operations targeting American facilities often involve coordination with services from multiple countries. Understanding their methods and capabilities requires international cooperation and information sharing. Diana's network of professional contacts included intelligence specialists throughout NATO countries, who provided information about foreign threats and operational techniques that might be used against American diplomatic facilities. But perhaps her most unusual qualification was psychological training that allowed her to maintain cover identities under extreme stress, while conducting operations that required split-second decisions about when to maintain cover versus when to reveal capabilities. The embassy operation required you to balance operational security with immediate threat response, Crawford noted. How do you make those decisions in real time? Quote, training scenarios simulate situations where maintaining cover conflicts with mission requirements. You learn to assess threat levels, evaluate operational consequences, and make decisions that protect both immediate security and long-term operational effectiveness. Diana's psychological profile showed exceptional stress tolerance and decision-making capability under pressure. Her evaluations indicated someone who could function effectively in high-stress environments while maintaining emotional stability and professional judgment. Your psychological assessments consistently show capabilities that exceed normal ranges for stress tolerance and situational adaptation, Crawford observed. The training is designed to identify and develop those capabilities. Not everyone who enters the program successfully completes the psychological conditioning required for extended undercover operations. Crawford understood that Diana represented the result of specialized training programs designed to create operatives capable of protecting American diplomatic interests through methods that couldn't be officially acknowledged or publicly recognized. Diana, your operational effectiveness depends on remaining unknown to the people you protect and invisible to the threats you counter. How do you maintain motivation for work that can never be publicly recognized? Diana was quiet for a moment, considering the question that addressed the fundamental challenge of her profession. The operations I've prevented would have compromised American security interests and potentially endangered American lives. The effectiveness of my work is measured by threats that never become public knowledge and crises that never develop. And the personal cost of maintaining cover identities that require you to be systematically underestimated and dismissed? It's the price of operational effectiveness. If embassy personnel or foreign intelligence services understood my actual capabilities, I couldn't function in the social environments where threats typically develop. Crawford realized that Diana's professional success required complete sacrifice of personal recognition and authentic relationships. Her effectiveness depended on being dismissed as unremarkable by everyone around her, including the American personnel she was assigned to protect. Your next assignment will require similar cover identity maintenance and extended social integration, Crawford said, consulting operational orders that outlined Diana's upcoming deployment. Where am I going next? American Consulate in Istanbul. Intelligence assessment indicates Turkish and Russian services are coordinating operations designed to compromise American influence in regional energy negotiations. Diana understood that her work protecting American diplomatic interests would continue in new environments with different threats, but requiring the same specialized capabilities that made her uniquely qualified for operations that officially didn't exist. Her legendary status within intelligence circles was based on preventing crises that never became public knowledge while maintaining cover identities that ensured no one would ever know who had protected them from threats they never realized they faced. 6 months after Diana's intervention at the Prague embassy, the reverberations of that evening had fundamentally transformed how American diplomatic facilities worldwide approached security operations and threat assessment. The wedding that had nearly provided cover for a sophisticated intelligence breach had become a case study in the evolving nature of diplomatic security. Ambassador Caldwell found himself briefing other American ambassadors throughout Europe about the importance of understanding that traditional security measures, while necessary, were insufficient against the sophisticated threats that modern diplomatic facilities face daily. The woman I dismissed as a minor bureaucrat attending a social obligation actually represented our most advanced counterintelligence capability, Caldwell explained during a classified briefing at the State Department. Her presence at my daughter's wedding prevented a security breach that could have compromised American diplomatic operations throughout Eastern Europe. The Prague incident had revealed gaps in embassy security awareness that extended far beyond one facility. State Department security reviews identified similar vulnerabilities at diplomatic facilities worldwide, leading to comprehensive revision of threat assessment protocols and security training programs. Regional Security Officer Marcus Whitfield had been promoted to head a new position, Director of Advanced Threat Recognition Training. His experience with Diana's operation qualified him to teach other security professionals how to identify and respond to threats that exceeded traditional security protocols. The most sophisticated threats often appear as routine activities, Whitfield explained to classes of embassy security personnel. Maintenance contractors, catering staff, cultural exchange participants, and even social guests can provide cover for intelligence operations that standard background checks won't detect. The training program Whitfield developed included specific instruction on recognizing the behavioral patterns that Diana had identified in the foreign operatives. Movement discipline, communication techniques, and equipment handling that indicated military training rather than civilian employment. But perhaps most importantly, the program taught security personnel to recognize and respect expertise that might appear in unexpected forms. The cultural assumption that had led to Diana's dismissal as a harmless civilian represented a security vulnerability that could be exploited by foreign intelligence services. Embassy staff throughout the State Department received updated guidance on threat recognition that included acknowledgement that American protective capabilities might not always be visible or officially acknowledged. Personnel were taught to take serious security concerns raised by any embassy community member, regardless of their apparent background or social status. The change in institutional culture was profound. Embassy social events that had previously been treated as pleasant diplomatic obligations now included security briefings that acknowledged the possibility of exploitation by sophisticated foreign intelligence operations. Deputy Chief of Mission Carol Preston, who had initially dismissed Diana's concerns about suspicious catering staff, became an advocate for security awareness training that emphasized the importance of questioning assumptions about capability based on appearance. We learned that dismissing concerns because they come from unexpected sources represents a fundamental security vulnerability, Preston explained during embassy staff training sessions. Professional threat assessment requires taking seriously any observation that suggests deviation from normal operational patterns. Quote, "The technical analysis of the surveillance equipment Diana had dismantled revealed capabilities that exceeded previous intelligence assessments of Russian technical programs. The discovery led to comprehensive security upgrades at American diplomatic facilities worldwide, including enhanced detection systems for sophisticated surveillance devices. More significantly, Diana's operation had identified a previously unknown Russian intelligence capability that was being deployed against American facilities throughout Europe. Counterintelligence services used the information she had gathered to identify and neutralize similar operations in Berlin, Vienna, and Warsaw. The international implications extended beyond American security interests. NATO intelligence sharing included information about the surveillance techniques Diana had uncovered, leading to improved security protocols at Allied diplomatic facilities throughout Europe. British, French, and German intelligence services implemented security measures based on Diana's analysis of Russian operational methods. Her work protecting one American embassy had strengthened diplomatic security throughout the Allied community. But the most lasting change involved recognition within the intelligence community that embedded protective capabilities required complete operational invisibility to remain effective. Diana's success had depended on being systematically underestimated by everyone around her, including the American personnel she protected. Intelligence training programs began, including case studies based on Diana's Prague operation, though her identity remained classified. Students learned about the importance of cover identity maintenance and the operational requirements that made recognition incompatible with effectiveness. The most effective protective capabilities often appear as unremarkable social presence, explained instructors at the Advanced Diplomatic Counterintelligence School. Operational success requires the ability to function within embassy communities while remaining invisible to both foreign threats and American personnel. Diana's legendary status within classified intelligence circles grew as details of her other operations became available to personnel with appropriate clearances. Her methods for threat detection and operational response became standard training materials for diplomatic security specialists. Young intelligence professionals learned that true expertise in diplomatic protection required capabilities that could never be publicly acknowledged or officially recognized. Diana's career represented the ultimate example of service that prioritized mission effectiveness over personal recognition. Embassy facilities worldwide began implementing, Prague Protocol security measures that acknowledged the possibility of sophisticated foreign intelligence operations during social events. Background verification procedures were enhanced to identify potential threats that traditional security checks might miss. The cultural shift extended to how embassy communities approach social interactions with unfamiliar personnel. Staff learned to balance diplomatic hospitality with security awareness that recognized the potential for exploitation by sophisticated foreign intelligence operations. 2 years after the Prague wedding, Diana's influence on diplomatic security had become institutionalized throughout American facilities worldwide. Security protocols incorporated her methods for threat detection, training programs taught her techniques for operational analysis, and embassy communities maintained awareness of capabilities that remained officially invisible. Ambassador Caldwell retired from diplomatic service with deep appreciation for protective capabilities that most ambassadors never encountered directly. His final report to the State Department included recommendations for continued support of embedded security programs that provided protection beyond traditional diplomatic security measures. The American diplomatic community is protected by capabilities and personnel whose effectiveness depends on remaining unknown to the people they serve, Caldwell wrote. Our security depends on individuals whose greatest success is preventing crises that never become public knowledge. Diana herself had moved on to new assignments that required the same operational invisibility that had made her Prague intervention possible. Her next operation involved potential threats to American trade negotiations in Southeast Asia, where she would again function as an unremarkable social presence while providing security capabilities that exceeded official recognition. The wedding guests who had attended Ambassador Caldwell's daughter's celebration never learned that their safety had depended on someone they had dismissed as a harmless bureaucrat. Diana's protection had been so effective that most people never realized they had needed protection at all. Her story became a reminder within intelligence circles that the most important security work happened completely outside public awareness, performed by individuals whose effectiveness required complete sacrifice of personal recognition for the protection of diplomatic interests that serve democracy worldwide. The ultimate measure of Diana's success wasn't the recognition she received, but the threats that never materialized, the crises that never developed, and the diplomatic relationships that remained secure because someone with her extraordinary capabilities had been present when sophisticated enemies assumed that American protective measures could be easily overcome. Her legacy lived in every embassy that implemented enhanced security protocols, every intelligence professional who learned to recognize threats beyond traditional assessment methods, and every diplomatic celebration that remained focused on diplomacy rather than becoming an opportunity for foreign intelligence exploitation. The wedding guest who had looked harmless had saved more than one embassy. She had strengthened the global infrastructure that protected American diplomatic interests while remaining as invisible as the threats she prevented. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.